Saeunn stood at the window of her study, high up in the once magnificent ivory tower. Before her lay the beaten and broken city of Mornstar, no longer the shining jewel of the southern lands. She could feel the pain, the fear, the anxiety arising from the people that cowered in their homes and shambled in the streets. Her people. The most recent assault from a dragon larger than any they have seen yet left the city ruined. She watched as homes smoldered with black smoke that filled the sky as the now homeless huddled in the streets, and as volunteer laborers began to dig mass graves. She watched, and she wept. She let herself feel their pain, their suffering, the weight of her failure, and most of all, because that dragon was far from the worst thing coming. The sound of a knock on her door pulled Saeunn's attention as she turned to watch her husband, Ratal, enter the study. The bloody bandage over his eye only helped to heighten her pain, her emotion. She turned back to the window, tears streaking down her face. The sound of boots came as Ratal made his way over to her, his arms wrapping around her waist as he took her in a warm embrace. She closed her eyes, letting herself feel his heat against her, a comforting warmth that helped to quiet her thoughts. They stood there for some time, enjoying the quiet moment, letting their hearts and their power merge. For the briefest moments of their embrace, she felt what he did. Love, exhaustion, and anxiety. Just like hers.
Logier thinks it's about to happen,
Ratal finally said, his arms locked around her.
Where?
Saeunn asked quietly.
About 40 miles southeast of Fog Point. He says he can see the swamp and creatures in it beginning to act strange.
Saeunn sighed.
I will need to be going then.
I still think I should come with you.
Ratal began, his grip tightening.
To do this alone?
Saeunn rotated in his embrace so that they were facing each other.
I'm not putting you in more danger than I already have. If it wasn't for me...
She reached up and caressed the side of his face where the bloody bandage was.
I chose to follow. It wasn't your fault.
Ratal said as he reached up and touched her hand.
We couldn't have known what our studies would do, what they would lead to.
Saeunn looked into his eye, seeing tears beginning to well up in the good one.
I can't lose you, my love. I am going alone, and that is final.
Ratal sighed, but did not push further on the matter. She gave him a kiss, allowing it to linger for some time, before she pulled away and brushed past him out of the study, and on to Murkmire. Saeunn stood alone in an empty clearing, her gaze up towards the crescent moon above. The sounds of the Murkmire swamp trilled in her ears as a gentle breeze blew through her hair.
Logier is never wrong about these things. It will be here,
she reassured herself anxiously. She heard a rustle, followed by a scraping sound as all the wildlife went quiet, even the wind coming to a halt. It was like the world was holding its breath. Trees suddenly began to crack and break as something massive began to slide through the mire all around her. The clearing began to come to life with strange cracks of this green and purple energy, like fireflies flitting through the space.
Fitting for you to be the first to die, Moon Mage.
The voice rattled in Saeunn's mind like a horrible cacophony, visions of desolation passing through her head with each word. She composed herself, standing up straight.
You are to leave this place, to leave this realm and never return. There will be consequences if you do not heed my words.
Consequences?
The creature spoke into her mind, seemingly almost amused.
My wings will carry an eternal night upon this land.
Saeunn finally spotted a massive set of ominous glowing eyes staring at her from the tree line. The creature began to rise from the brush, a towering serpentine form, its head coming well above 40 feet over the canopy.
I will devour every ounce of magic that exists here. Every mage will feel my fangs drain them of life as I ensure any whisper of the forbidden is wiped from this realm's existence. All while parading your corpse as a banner on my crusade.
Its scales were like that of the night itself, countless stars dotting each piece of its body. From its back stretched impossibly large astral wings that seemed to almost span into eternity.
Consequences, little goddess. You called me here in your lust for what is forbidden to you. That is your consequence.
Her breath caught as she took in the full scale of the creature.
By the Elden, this creature is massive.
Thoughts of what it might do if she failed again crossed her mind, forcing determination to take over.
We were looking to save our people. I will not let you take them from me.
Saeunn commanded, steeling herself as she began to conjure her magics.
You no longer have a choice.
The creature hissed before rearing its head back and striking forward. Saeunn narrowly managed to teleport out of the way, the serpent crashing into the ground where she once stood. It whipped its head around, eyes going alight as the strange motes of energy in the clearing began to intensify, purple lightning crackling between them before blasting at Saeunn. She threw up a barrier of magic, blocking the bolts. As the barrier dropped, she dodged another strike from the serpent, conjuring a bolt as she landed behind it. The arcane blast slammed into the creature's side, and it reeled in pain before whipping around, slamming its tail into her and sending Saeunn tumbling across the clearing. It bared its fangs in a sickly smile as she climbed to her feet. She took a deep breath, regaining her composure and steeling herself for the fight ahead. 4 hours later, Saeunn was still fighting. She fought with everything she had, for her land, for her people, for this realm. But she was getting tired. Their battle had caused this once peaceful clearing to be decimated. Rocks and other debris floated past as if gravity no longer had a hold on it, a byproduct of the strange magics this primordial creature exuded.
I need to end this. Soon.
She thought. She could feel the exhaustion. Her body wanted to give up, but the creature... It seemed like no matter how long they fought, it would never get tired. It would win in a battle of attrition. All it had to do was outlast her. Saeunn launched herself into the sky. Breathing heavy, she brought her hands together as powerful magic coalesced at her fingertips. She ripped her hands apart, and with it, the sky tore open. Massive chunks of stone came screaming through the tears, straight towards the serpent. It looked to the sky, letting out a deafening cry, and curled its wings in front of it. To Saeunn's horror, the meteors hit its wings and were... absorbed. It was almost as if they had passed through a portal, never finding their mark. Stunned, she watched as the creature took to the sky above her, its form blotting out the moon behind it. Its eyes flashed as it unfurled its wings, and the meteors came shooting out, returned from wherever they were absorbed to, and straight at her. She narrowly managed to get a barrier up as the stones crashed into her, sending her rocketing to the ground. Saeunn hit hard, crying out in pain as she felt something break as she slammed into the clearing below, the earth cratering around her. As the dust began to clear, Saeunn lay there, tears welling up in her eyes, each breath painful as she drew it in.
I can't do this,
she thought, looking up at the imposing form of the serpent as it hovered in the night sky, moonlight filtering around it.
Moonlight. The moon.
She thought, an idea building in her head.
I can't beat it in a fight. But maybe.
Her vision swimming, body numb with pain, Saeunn did something desperate.
Ayer, Mother, if you can hear me, I need your help. I know you are still mad at us. I don't know if we will ever be able to mend those wounds, but if you care at all for the people of this realm, please.
Saeunn lay there, looking up at the serpent who was smiling. The menacing look of an enemy who thought the battle won. It reared its head back, preparing to deliver the final strike. She closed her eyes, awaiting death to take her. But it didn't come. She opened her eyes to see the world frozen around her. In the beams of moonlight that flowed around the creature, she could just barely make out a silhouette. A set of blazing blue eyes, like an eternal arcane bonfire, regarding her from across the clearing. The silhouette nodded to her before vanishing. She gasped as a flood of power slammed into her like a tidal wave. Time unfroze around her as the serpent was knocked off balance by the surge. Saeunn stood, gritting her teeth to the pain as arcane energy flowed through her veins. She could see the weave of magic that connected all things, that connected her to all things. Except this creature. Magic seemed to warp around it, an abnormality in the rules of the arcane.
What is this? A second wind?
The creature boomed in her mind, amused.
I am Saeunn, goddess of the moon and daughter of Ayer. You were warned. This land will not have you!
Saeunn reached out, grabbing a hold of the streams of moonlight, bending them to her will. She lashed them together and commanded they ensnare this creature. The light listened as if it was rope being tied around a beast. She then reached out to the moon, calling forth her connection to it and demanding its help. The strands of light enveloping the serpent lashed themselves upwards to the sky, to the moon, and Saeunn began to push. The serpent roared in defiance as it struggled to break its binding. It fought with everything it had, pushing back with all its might.
You are not welcome here!
Saeunn boomed. She screamed, the ground fracturing around her as their powers collided, and she pushed. Rock and stone soared into the sky as she strained. The lashings began to glow brighter and brighter before, with one final roar of defiance, the serpent was pulled away into the night sky and towards its new prison. Saeunn collapsed to her knees, breathing heavy on the now floating island that used to once be the clearing where their battle started. It was not over indefinitely. She could feel her connection to the bindings that held that monster in place, and she could feel it angrily fighting against those bonds. But it was over for now. She fell onto her back, looking up at the moon, letting the exhaustion wash over her, humming a quiet tune that her mother used to sing so many years ago. Her people, this land, was safe, and in that, she hadn't failed.